Blog Talk Radio. Welcome to MindShifters Radio with your co-host, the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce, and his wife, Jeanie. Michael and Jeanie share with you the wisdom of the ancient Aramaic internal process of forgiveness. They offer tools and support 5 days a week from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. They will support you in building a solid foundation within yourself to live in pure love. In Aramaic, Rahma. Michael is the author of Why Is This Happening to Me Again? For more information on Michael and Jeanie, please visit www.whyagain.com. And now your co-host, the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael and Jeanie Ryce. And the truth that is rooted within me.
Good morning or good afternoon, and welcome to October. And today is Memorial Day celebration 127. Welcome to our show. Our call-in number is 646-200-4169, and then press 1, and it lets me know you want to talk, and we'll put you in queue to talk to Michael. And so welcome, Michael. Michael's not with us yet. There he is.
Hey, sweetie, I am here. And we have an absolutely awesomely gorgeous day here in the Ozarks in southern Missouri. Sunny, blue skies, and it's about 70 degrees. Fabulous. And we are here with an ongoing conversation about healing the dynamics of insanity in our culture, and in particular, the dynamics of war. Did you have our celebration day figured out, or our day of honoring Memorial Day, honey?
Yes, you must not have been on yet when I announced that it's day number 127.
So for 127 days, we've been inviting each person who listens to the show to become part of the support for eradicating war from planet Earth. How could we possibly do that? Well, we'll offer that the root cause of war is unresolved hostility and fear inside of a human being. When one lives in unresolved hostility and fear, their minds present them hallucinations that everybody else is to blame for what's going on in their lives. And not knowing how to be responsible, of course, it becomes some form of attack. The attack starts in thoughts, then it becomes words, then it becomes fisticuffs, and then it becomes guns and bullets and bombs. So if we can attack this at its root, somebody says, well, if we just ban the bomb, then we'll be in better shape. Well, I kind of doubt it, because the thoughts, the feelings, the insanities that lead to war will still be going on. Let's go to the root. What is the root? If my physiology can produce any form of hostility or fear, if my physiology can tear me out of my life, then we offer there's a really easy definition for human life, and that is the active presence of love. You and I are designed, if you hold a newborn child, you know exactly what human life is. It is the awesome presence of love. So we invite you to move into that awesome presence if you're experiencing some form of hostility or fear, and begin to dissolve your hostility or fear. The dissolution of hostility or fear that never belonged in the human system in the first place is called forgiveness in the ancient Aramaic language. And if you're not familiar with that tool or that conversation, then we invite you to look on the right-hand side of our website. Our website is www.whyagain.com. whyagain.com. Right-hand side, about a half a dozen links down, you'll see one that says Download Worksheets. Click on that link, and the first 4 links will explain the whole forgiveness process to you. A written process, instructions. There are 2 audios of people going through the worksheet process, as well as the actual worksheet itself. So join us in forgiving, not letting others off the hook because we're in some sort of turmoil or pain, but rather changing the content of our own minds. So we welcome you to the show. we welcome you to the process of support in learning forgiveness. And, Jeanie, do we have any callers on the line or anything happening in the chat room to be aware of?
No, and I'm not real sure what's going on in the chat room. I log on to it, and then it'll say another user has logged in, and it kicks me out. And I've done that 4 times already, and the show's not but 5 minutes in. So I'm not sure what's going on there. We don't have a lot of conversation going on in the chat room. There's several people listening on the radio. So if you want to talk, press 1. It lets me know. I'll put you in the queue. Tim and David, neither one are with us yet today. That's where we stand.
All right, very good. Well, it's a delight to have this opportunity to be with you. Everybody who's playing, and we would love to hear from you if you have a question, a thought, an answer, an idea about our topic, about our conversation. And I came across an interesting quote this morning from a medical doctor named Stanislav Grof. And here's what he says. This proclivity toward violence and greed is psychospiritual. As each individual turns inward and undergoes deep transformation, the species evolves, hopefully, in time. And when he speaks of this idea of greed, what is greed? In essence, greed is, I want what I want when I want it. And by God, if you get in my way, if you are not here to fulfill my infantile demands, I will rage at you. I will do whatever I need to do to get what I want. And, of course, one who lives that way might seem to get what they want in the external world, but the cost is they've had to give up their human lives to get it. And few people think of that as selfishness, but really my fear and hostility-based demand that life, whatever it is, fulfill my every whim at every moment, and I go into hostility and fear when I don't, leaves me in difficulty. Because having given up my human life, there is no satisfaction. There is no aliveness. There is no real experience of life once I've given up my true essence. All there is a movement from one hostility and fear-based game to another, or one approval game to another. People say to each other, I love you, but in most cases what they're really saying is, gee, you haven't brought up my hostility or fear. My infantile demands have not been frustrated by you today. Therefore, I approve of you. And I won't say I approve of you because that doesn't sound very good. I'll say I love you. And that's just a plain, simple fraud. Because somebody fulfills all of your infantile demands and your selfish, self-centered needs does not mean that there's anything to do with love in that relationship. Again, if you hold a newborn child, you will experience the awesome presence that we humans are designed to be. If you've given that up in order to approve of somebody for what they've done or haven't done, then human life is gone, and we're here to support you in restoring human life, to reclaim, I mean literally, actually, physically experience in your physiology the absolute awesome presence of active love 24/7, 365. That's what we're here to support you in. And imagine the transformation that's going to take place when we live on a planet that does that. Now, it seems if we're steeped in our hostilities and fears, and we've been brought up in family systems where every time a parental desire was frustrated by the child, you know, the child who, knowing itself is love, lovingly approves of itself, but has come into a system where, no, you're supposed to disapprove of yourself. What kind of dynamics happen there? And, you know, that's just the starting point, and on and on and on it goes. And so we're looking to assist each and every one that's here on the show, and by extension, everyone in our family systems and our cultures, to change that dynamic inside themselves. And so It is wake-up time. Wake up from the insanity of hostility or fear and let go of both of those dynamics and restore your human life. Again, if that seems like a strange possibility to you, one of the things I'd invite you to do is to go to our website, and when you go to www.whyagain.com, in the upper right-hand corner, very corner, Jeanie has put a link to a radio show that we did back, I guess it's getting to be almost a month ago, with a young lady who was extremely courageous in calling in and being able to do, or willing to do, some forgiveness work around some things that were very upsetting for her. At least it appeared that the upset was in the external world. And you'll hear her as she works through that worksheet live, and it's awesome because she goes from issue to issue to issue before she finally discovers what's really at the root of what's going on in that situation that seems so current today. She literally goes back to 20 years ago and then goes back to childhood. It's a really fabulous example of the forgiveness process. So we invite you to tap into that and think about how you might apply that in your life to the places where when you turn in a certain direction, you have frustration, you have anger, you have sadness, you have grief, you have pain, and be willing to let loose of and undo that sadness, fear, grief, will, and pain. Jeanie, any questions in the chat room? Any callers?
Well, I can't stay in the chat room long enough to say. I just have gotten kicked out 3 more times. So I'm going to try to sign in under my own name and see if it lets me stay in there. But there's no questions. We do have David on the line now with us.
Oh, great. David, welcome. Can you hear me, David?
I can, Michael. Can you hear me?
Oh, I got you.
Huh?
Yes, sir. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm outdoors right at the moment, and so it may be a little bit noisy. I'll find some place that's quiet and give you a ring back then.
Oh, actually, you sound pretty good. I don't hear any external noise.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm doing pretty well.
Are you on the speakerphone?
No.
No? Okay. No, you sound pretty good.
Okay, good. So I just tuned in, so I don't know what you guys were talking about. Just wanted to make sure that I connected with everyone and thank everyone for their support and let them know that the process is still continuing. It's for this grieving process that I'm going through and my family and so forth. And it's great to have the support of everyone there on the show and connected to listen and doing the work. For it really has, on an energetic level, just assisted me in holding the space of love and being loved as everyone comes up against their grief processes as well. So it's, and I'm doing well now after our conversation this morning, and shedding more tears and more worksheets, and just getting clear with all of it. Just going through it.
Well, David, I was just thinking about maybe sharing a little bit about our conversation, what had happened and what you were working through last night, and what was up for you this morning as you were able to do that piece of work from last night. Is there anything you'd care to share about that?
Well, until you pointed it out this morning, I have a commitment and agreement with a couple of people that every day I'll do minimum of one worksheet and a mind shifter every day, and I've been doing that every day for almost 3 years now. I've been doing it for quite some time, and each time I think I was telling you that I did a worksheet on it's safe and healing for me to feel my rage, and up until just a few years ago, then I was doing everything to keep from feeling the rage, because because I think at one time that was a major addiction for me that I wasn't aware of, that the rage and the hostility, until I was introduced to your work. And it makes sense. And I gave up violence probably back in 1986, I think is when it was, that I literally made a commitment out loud to another person that I now let go of violence, not having any idea of what that meant, and just absolutely made no sense to me at all to commit to that. And then after all these years, to make a commitment to let go of the rage, wasn't even really aware of that. And then from our conversation this morning, and knowing that the rage was just my cover-up to avoid feeling the feelings that I had underneath of that. A lot of sadness with my son leaving, and I get it that that my rage was keeping me, and it's real convenient for me to start raging or to get angry or to complain about something, so that I keep my feelings of sadness buried, and it's very tempting. It's very tempting. My part of my conversation this morning was about, why the hell should I do this? No one else is doing this anyway, and it's like, it's not my work for them to do their work, and it is for me to do mine. And I see that it is opening the space for other people, and my focus right now is my major focus is on my grandson and my two sons, so that whatever it is that's coming up for them, that they will have the courage and the strength and the space for them to heal the feelings that they have underneath of there, rather than to get into rationalizing it and getting on with life and doing the same things that's been done over and over in order to avoid looking at anything. So that's a process. That's a major piece for me. So any comments?
Well, I simply hold the space, David. You've done so much powerful work around this, and I certainly understand, as we discussed this morning, the feelings of, well, why should I bother? Nobody else is interested. Nobody else wants to hear it. Everybody else just wants to go about their daily lives and forget it. And the courage it takes to, instead of forgetting it or burying it with another drug, busyness, to just be right there and feeling it. And when you spoke of sadness this morning on our phone call, I would offer that it was, what would be a good word for it? Mega layers beyond sadness. It is, in 40 years of doing this work, I think the level you touched into is some of the most intense and the deepest grief I've ever heard somebody allow themselves to feel. And as I said, I acknowledge your courage. I acknowledge your process. The simple fact that you, coming out of a family system with a lot of terror and trauma in it, created the level of relationship with your son that you had, that there is such grief in his passing, is an awesome piece of work. Certainly not something from what you shared that your dad ever would have had in relationship to you, or at least that he'd ever allow himself to feel. So that you created that level of relationship with your son and were conscious enough and created a conscious relationship is awesome and monumental in terms of healing your family system. And then that you were willing to just straight out face and embrace that level of pain is just a huge piece of work. I acknowledge you for doing for your family system, for your grandson, and as the Native Americans would say, mataquiasan. They understood, and the word mataquiasan meant for all my relations.
Mm. Yeah, thank you. And you reminded me that there was points in my life with my dad, especially when I told you about when I was leaving from Vietnam at the airport, where then my dad said to me, son, if you don't want to go, I'll get you out of this kind of thing. He said, if you want to go to Canada, I'll do whatever it is that you want. And I remember looking at him very strangely, like I didn't understand that, because at that time I was willing and committed to going, and I never understood that until doing this work of where he was really coming from, and that took a lot. He was only able to hold that space for a few moments, and I get it that he really he really tapped into his true essence with that. So he opened the space for me. I mean, I've told that story to several people, and so it's so that's the work.
In his tough dog-eat-dog world, that was a pretty deep level of expression of love.
Yep. Yeah.
To be able to come forward with that, and the heroism of his age and his culture and all of that, just a very, very powerful acknowledgement.
Yeah, people that go ahead.
Well, and that you've taken it 1,000 steps further, and the relationships you're creating around you is powerful.
Well, thank you, and it is the work. Everyone that's out there that's doing their work, their true forgiveness, their internal forgiveness work, is what's supporting all of this happening. You and I talked about that on an energetic level, and for the world to make the shift and the transition, reaching critical mass. I see so much more people willing and levels of willingness and commitment than I've ever experienced before.
Well, and you're part of opening that space in a powerful way in a family system that, from what you shared with me, probably has rarely, if ever, seen it ever in the whole bloodline.
Yeah.
So it's pretty powerful that you're moving your life in that direction, the life of your grandson, your daughter-in-law, and all the people around you. The simple fact that the other night, as there was a birthday party going on, and you were able to be in the presence of your former wife, who would rather you were not present on the planet, as I understand it, that you were able to make a choice to just hold a space of love rather than get into, what old dynamics might have looked like.
Yeah. Well, that is the key to, And if anybody's wondering, did I want to be there? The answer is no. And do I want to stop? Yes. And do I want to, it'd be real easy for me to head right back to Heartland and mellow out and process through things, and this is where the strongest process is for me right now. And so do I want to be in there? No. And am I willing to? Yes. And to me, that's what it's all about for everyone. And for those who know me and for those who don't know me, for those who know me know that, if you make a commitment and you want to do the work, I will give you every ounce of support that is available to me in order to do the work. And for those of you who don't know me, you give me a call and I invite you to play the game, building the brain cells, or just make an agreement, and you have my support in keeping those agreements, because that to me is what that's just a key piece to all of it.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome, David. Very powerful. And for those who may be new to the show, the basis of our conversation right now is that David, who's the property manager at Heartland, center manager, got up 2 weeks ago Sunday morning to a phone call that his 37-year-old son had passed away. So we're with you, David, and supporting you in every way we can.
Thank you, Michael. So do we have any callers?
I don't know, Jeanie, do we have any callers or anything in the chat room to be aware of? Have you been able to get into the chat room and stay there?
I finally signed in just under my name. It keeps kicking me out when I go in as co-host, so I just gave up on that one. There's a few people out there just listening. Tim's now on the line with us, and a few people out on the phones just hanging out there. If you want to call in and ask a question, the number is 646-200-4169. And then pressing 1, it lets me know that you want to speak.
Dr. Tim, how are you today?
Doing very well, thank you. Hello, David. It's good to hear your voice and that you're hanging in there and that you're committed to stay and do your work where it's the most powerful challenge for you to do it. I send you all the love and support I can in that endeavor. And I just had another very powerful experience with a person who was doing some work in my office. And there was a family trauma that happened a few weeks ago. And since that family trauma, her sister had gotten angry at her and refused to contact her. So she did some work in the office, releasing her anger at her sister and her pain at her sister's choices. And her cell phone went off with a text from that sister. Not 10 minutes after we finished the work. And then she asked me, how could this happen? And I said, it happens because there isn't any separation. We're all connected, especially connected to those that we have shared our lives with and are emotionally connected to. And when you did your work, you opened the space for her to reach out to you because you dropped a lot of anger and a lot of your own hurt. And there was a text message from her sister saying, I don't know what happened between us. I don't want this to be this way. I love you. So
awesome.
It's the power of the work, and I am glad to be on the team.
It's amazing how over and over we see those kinds of experiences that seem like, well, they can't possibly be connected, but once you've seen it so many times, there's just no question that they're connected, that they're all part of the process of healing. And it's awesome to get to work with people who are willing enough to do that depth of work, that we get to see that. And, of course, that's always inspiring for our process, too, isn't it? I love Richard Bach's statement, we teach best that which we most need to learn.
Well, and it really is just more motivation for me personally to just keep doing what I've been doing, and especially when you hit a time like David is in, where the stress is up and the chips are down in a way that goes way beyond words and a heartbeat. That's the time when all the practice pays off. Because if you've been working, if you've been building the brain cells and been undoing the old conditioning, it becomes much easier to stay in that space of love, to do the work, and not buy into the old conditioning. And that's when miracles happen.
Yeah. Are you still with us, David?
I am, Michael.
Oh, good. So that's a kind of an interesting point because, of course, with all the stress that has been going on in your family system the last 2 weeks while you've been there, and once or twice you've mentioned to me how, you could have gone off like a rocket and chose to do something different, and how many times the whole thing could have been turned into such, just more of the good old family feeling of rage and pain and blame and drama and trauma. And that you've been an anchoring force for doing it differently is pretty awesome.
Well, as you and I say, what else is there to do? You know, what is that you say? Once you put your hands to the plow, and it does get challenging, and that's the reason that I'm so grateful of, like Tim being on here and the support and all of the people that are out there that say, okay, I'm going against everything that's been taught, everything that's come up, and I'm going to look at it. And that in itself is the first step to all of it, to just be willing. That's your reference to cosmic grease. It's not to know or to understand all of it. It's being willing to see it differently and then do it differently based on that. And that's I can't imagine doing anything else. I wouldn't. We were talking about that at service yesterday. I was telling you about the new lady that I'd met, that Terry, that her and her husband are doing healing work. And as we said, what else is there to do once you know the work to do? There's nothing else to do. Doesn't make it any easier. It does. It just makes it more valuable. And I know that in the time element of this, that I'll be able to look back at this and really reflect and see it so much differently, as most of us have had experiences in our life that at the time when it didn't feel very good and there was no sense to it. And as my cousin Terry says, there's some good in all of it. There is some good in it. And as I reflected back to him, I think that there can be good that comes out of it if the work is done. If it isn't, then not coming from a judgment of good or bad, because as you know in the Aramaic, good means proper time, proper place. Nothing to do with being right or wrong with all of it. So this is the time, this is the space, the place for that. And if I do my work, then it does open up. That's my take. But thank you very much, Tim, for being on there and for all of your support as well.
You're very welcome.
Well, and before both of you gentlemen get on, I shared a quote from Stanislav Grof, who's a medical doctor and breath worker, actually. And what he says is, this proclivity toward violence and greed is psychospiritual. Each individual turns inward and undergoes deep transformation when they do. When that happens, the species evolves. And then he finishes up with the statement, hopefully in time. And David, in the face of what's happening in your family system, to me that is just, it's speaking right to your process and that proclivity or attraction to just pain and hostility. You've chosen to bypass it, and I get how you're making that choice sometimes second to second to second in order not to fall into the past family patterns. And to me, it's the work of people like yourself who are willing to do that and to engage in something that's relatively new on planet Earth, an actual true human life, embracing all of life. Not just embracing the people close by, but embracing all of life. And, it's like you're one of the ones, David, that's opening the door for that to happen and bringing in, there's a philosopher who is a paleontologist, and he coined a term. His name's not coming to mind, but he will in a moment. He coined the term the noosphere, and that as a paleontologist, it was actually a Roman Catholic priest and a paleontologist, which is an interesting combination. And his idea was that the noosphere was the thought layer around the planet, and that thought layer was akin to the unconscious mind of Carl Jung, and that people, by and large, were controlled by that thought layer. And that as someone chooses to go somewhere where no one has gone before, the real journey, the real task of discovery, as has been said, is within us, that when someone is willing in any circumstance to go where no one has gone before, they are bringing into the noosphere a new possibility, a new thought. And all it takes is time, because the effectiveness of that new and higher thought is like a virus. Once it starts, there'll be people who'll try to put it back in the box. But once a new and higher discovery is found, we are human beings. We are designed to function as love. Then that thought becomes a possibility for everybody on the planet. We face a circumstance where yesterday we would have attacked and stop and take a breath and hold the space of love instead. We've created a new energy in the noosphere, and as that energy becomes powerful enough, as it hits critical mass, there will be a shift and there will be a change. And we are here to be part of that change and to bring in that new possibility. There's a woman named Karen Armstrong who wrote a book entitled The History of God, and it just so ties in with what we're doing. She says, in the ancient world, people believed that it was only by participating in this divine life, that is, the active presence of love, that they would become truly human. And it seems like the ancients had some inkling of that, but the violent took over and have run the system for too long. It's time for a shift to take place, and I think that's the essence of the shift for 2012. It's not about the destruction of the planet, but the Mayans had a calendar which they used that calendar to determine on a daily basis what the universe was providing for them in the way of support in their lives and for their purpose. And that, as opposed to being the end of the world, as many are trying to make it out, the Mayans would think we were nuts if they listened to most Westerners' conversations around that whole calendar thing. But this was one of 3 calendars, and that we're reaching a point where there's a shift in the energy available on the planet from that of power and control, which, of course, to a great degree is based in rage and fear, and shifting into integrity and ethics. That's the shift that's coming. That's the end of an age of insanity that's happening, and we're moving into a new place. And, as each of us makes that higher choice each time we do, we're opening the noosphere. We're making more dense in the noosphere, the thought layer around the planet, the possibility that we humans could all actually choose our human lives instead of the insanity that our culture teaches, that we could choose love instead of hostility or fear. And that doesn't mean that we approve of what's happening or has happened. It doesn't mean we don't hold people accountable if there's some behavior that's improper. It doesn't mean you lay down and you let people walk all over your face. It means you choose to live as active love and to maintain your human life, whatever everybody else does. And when you function from that, instead of the good old family feelings of hostility or fear, everything changes everywhere around you. Right down to, as Tim just shared, 10 minutes after doing a particular piece of work around a particular person who's been relatively incommunicado, there's text saying, hey, I want to work this out. That's the power of what's going on in the noosphere. And we're getting close to critical mass where that noosphere is being so imbued and so filled with the active presence of love that change is occurring. And we invite each of you to go to www.whyagain.com, and on the right-hand side, the 6th or so link down is download worksheets. Download the first 4. If this conversation makes sense to you and you want to participate and be part of the constructive change, then please download those first 4 links Start listening to the forgiveness process and how it works. Read the new chapter 24 from the book. It's all free downloads. And actually put the pen to the paper and do the worksheet process. You'll find out things about yourself you never even imagined were true. And as you find out about those things and you are able to forgive them, that is, remove them from your structure, they will no longer be the major bugaboo that they are today. So I invite you to do that. And David, any other thoughts or comments at this point? Anything else to share?
David's actually off the line now.
Oh, okay. Well, David, being off the line, we just extend our hearts to you and our support and our caring. It's a difficult day. The depth, when we were on the phone this morning, the depth of pain that he was expressing was just, in 40 years of working with people and doing this work, probably the deepest I've seen, felt, and heard. So if everyone would just expand your heart space, think about David Hayes and his whole family. His son Ryan being able to go directly to the light, having left his body behind. His former wife was in a lot of pain, but being kind of callous and not really looking at some of those things. Just hold the space for all of them. The brother who hosted the party where the death occurred has got to be in a lot of trauma and pain. He woke up at, he went to bed about 4 a.m. and woke up, there was a bachelor party, and woke up with his brother beside him dead. I can't imagine what that young man must be feeling, but we certainly send and open our hearts, Bradley, to support you in your healing. So, Dr. Tim, do you have a thought for us? We haven't found you yet, Tim, if you're there.
Are you here?
Hey, there, I got you.
Okay. My thought is that what you're describing is very intense and can seem to be very, very painful. And as people talk about this, and you just gave the description of what happened within David's family, I can imagine it resonates a lot of pain and sadness for people. And I just want to encourage people, if they're listening, to grab a hold of it and realize if you're feeling pain or sadness or any other negative emotion, as Michael talks about what happened with David's family, that energy was in you before you got on the phone today. And if Michael's words are resonating, it's a chance for you to dismantle it and grab a hold of the worksheet process or call in and help Michael help step you through forgiving, canceling, dismantling the pain that's in you. And as each of us does that, we help all of us move closer toward that state of conscious, active, present love that we are meant to live in.
Absolutely, and that's what we're here for, 100%. And we appreciate the opportunity to have you folks on the show, listening, even if you're not saying anything, and we would love to hear from you. It always makes for a more exciting show. If somebody calls in that has a real-life issue that you can say, well, that couldn't possibly apply here, well, let's see if we can support you and see if it could apply wherever you're at. Give us a call. The calling number is 646-200-4169. We'd be delighted to hear from you. And if you do call in and you want to say something, if you hit 1, that will put a little hand up in the control panel where Jeanie is running the show. And she'll know you want to say something, and we'll get to chat with you. So we would be delighted and honored to hear from you with your questions or your thoughts. And while we're just being with that, a couple of things to let you know about. November, we'll be starting our tour of Florida. We'll be on both the east and the west coasts and the center of Florida, so we'll be around the state. You can go to our website, www.whyagain.com, And instead of clicking the download worksheets link for those first 4 links we talked about, click the link that says schedule. And there you'll find what we've set up so far. We have several weeks set up around the state of Florida, and we would love some invitations to visit a few more cities in Florida to round out our tour for this winter. So right now we're scheduled to be in, we're talking with someone in Miami. We're going to be in Fort Lauderdale, Boca Raton, Pompano Beach, Sarasota, St. Petersburg, and looking at some other locations as well. So come and join us. And, of course, we do have our schedule posted now, thank you, Jeanie, for the 2012 season at Heartland. We'll be planning a 65-day intensive beginning in July. I don't remember the date. Do you have the date handy, Jeanie, where our 65-day starts? July the...
Yes, it's on July the 13th.
13th.
Yes.
So we'll be beginning a 65-day intensive July 13th. And as well, we're looking at, we haven't got it confirmed. It is on the website, but we're just waiting to hear back from Ari. The 2 weeks before that intensive starts, or 2.5 weeks or so, we're going to plan to do a food, fun, work and forgiveness. Food, fun, work, and forgiveness at Heartland. Ari's going to come and do some of his chef magic in the kitchen, both for you to taste some new recipes and some of the awesome cuisine, and he'll be teaching how to create that cuisine as part of that particular intensive. It'll be kind of a work month, or 2 weeks actually, of work projects. We'll do some work projects during the day. We'll be doing some forgiveness work. We'll be doing some breath work, MindShifters and still point breathing, and hands-on with Ari in the kitchen is the plan. We're just waiting to hear back from Ari. He's checking his schedule to see if that's going to be dates that will work with for him. So we're just kind of moving along in those directions. And any callers, Jeanie, or anything in the chat room that anybody's having to say?
No, someone asked about a reading, but then they hung up before I could even answer them that's Carol Guy's show. But if anybody has any kind of a question or comment that we can assist you with, give us a call at 646-200-4169. We'd love to hear from you.
Well, we want to encourage people to do whatever they can to try and set up their own MindShifter group. It's one of the most rewarding things I do. I've been telling people for years now that the Tuesday night group is the highlight of my week. And what you'll end up doing if you can start a group is surrounding yourself with some of the nicest and most loving people in your world, and you'll watch miracles happen on a fairly regular basis. We talked about it last week after our meeting, that a woman had a significant breakthrough on doing a worksheet. She was very stuck, and she began the worksheet believing that her sister was creating anger and fear in her. And by the time she reached the end of the worksheet, she had remembered 2 very intense comments made by one of each of her parents, and that her beliefs and her holding on to her image of herself from those comments was the source of her pain. And the interactions with her sister was simply stirring it up for her to get a look at. And she felt tearful and joyful and lighter at the end of just doing one worksheet, and I would offer that's possible for anyone. And the tool is available free off the website, as Michael's already outlined. But to go beyond that, to gather 2 or 3 or 4 or more people together to do this work as a group creates a space of love and energy that opens energetic windows and allows things to happen that you just can't really believe until you start to see it for yourself. So once again, I thank you, Michael, for making those tools available, and I would encourage anyone to start their own group and use this internet show to be a support, to make that happen and make it as full and effective and loving as it can be.
For sure. It definitely will open new spaces. If you look in the scientific community, there's some conversation about how new paradigms emerge, and what the current thinking is that new paradigms generally emerge, usually, in a flash, and oftentimes, a flash that comes in the middle of the night with someone that's deeply engaged in crisis, somebody that's deeply emerged in crisis, and the people who bring a new understanding are usually those who have not yet been steeped in the old understanding. And, of course, we have been steeped in the understanding of we as human beings that we're, how often have you heard the thought, well, we're only human, as a sorry excuse for some sort of rage or hostility or attack or fear-based behavior. And my offering to you is that if you're not experiencing the active presence of love 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, try it. You'll like it. It's awesome. And it will lead you to opening new paradigms that have never been conceived of before. You'll do that in your own life and in your own world. And those who are stuck in the rut of, everybody knows this. Everybody doesn't know. Everybody's been brainwashed into thinking they know. But think about holding that newborn child, that awesome active presence of love. Does everybody know how it feels to function as that? When Dr. Tim talks about a support group, he's talking about a group of people who come together every week, or some of them every 2 weeks, to join in the pursuit of experiencing life fully, totally, completely as the active presence of love, no matter what's going on in our worlds. That's the pursuit of a support group. And what happens in that space is, as each person learns to get more and more out of their heads and their current paradigm, their good old family feelings, their good old cultural feelings, and move into a different space. I loved how, I think it was Emerson, if I remember correctly, said, get your bloated nothingness out of the way. If you function in your world out of hostility and fear, then, as he says, you're bloated nothingness. You don't have a human life. Are you ready to claim? Are you ready to proclaim that you are a human being, the active presence of love, and then do what it takes to face everything in you that takes you out of that state of being? Now, of course, there will always be a circumstance that you can blame it on. There will always be somebody or something going on that you'll be able to go, well, no, I'm only feeling this because of what they did. I'm only feeling this because of what happened. No, this has got nothing to do with me. I'm not involved. It's all their fault. You ever found yourself in that kind of conversation when you weren't functioning out of a human life? And you'll notice if you've been through that experience 87 different times with 42 different people, you're the only one that was there every time. Imagine if once a week you were part of a group of people who came together to experience themselves out of a new paradigm, to experience themselves and each other, to gather support for themselves and to offer support to others, to truly experience every moment of this awesome experience called life out of our human lives, out of the active presence of love. How different would our world and our culture be? How different would your life be if every time you go into your hostile story, you had someone like Dr. Tim or anyone else at the support group supporting. Dr. Tim came on the show a few weeks ago, and he had gone through a major experience of kind of going unconscious, and was in the support group that somebody was able to support him. We're all in this together. And when we experience ourselves and each other as the active presence of love, imagine you start to create your family system. If you're not already doing this, imagine if you started to create your family system in a way that every interaction came from a gentle, nurturing space of love instead of from a place of some form of hostility or fear. How different would that last interaction where there was perhaps rage and separation that happened if one or both of you involved had said, the energy's getting a little hot here. Let's take a deep breath. Let's remember who we are as human beings. Let's reconnect to the active presence of love that we are, and let's let ourselves experience this event out of that love. Look back through your life. How many experiences in your life would have totally changed the direction of your life if that's what you had done? I guarantee everybody that's listening, it would have changed your life so many different times. That's one of the gifts that a support group gives. If I come into the group and I'm in my hostility at the moment, somebody's going to call me on it. Somebody say, gee, Michael, those words sound like they're coming from a place in your mind that are pretty hostile. Well, what are you talking about? That's not true. Well, I notice you're not breathing. Why don't you take a breath? Okay, I'll take a breath. Oh, wow, that feels like a relief. Thanks for reminding me. Gee, when I was saying that, I guess it, when I really think about it and feel it now, it really did kind of feel and sound kind of hostile. I didn't even realize I was in that space of hostility. Thanks for pointing it out. And, by the way, would the group mind supporting me in doing a worksheet around this whole situation? I had wanted such and such to do such and such a behavior, and I was willing to give up my human life, the active presence of love in me, to get into some form of hostility or fear mode to get them to do what I wanted them to do. I really need to do some work around this. And it's awesome when a whole room full of people turn their loving attention toward you instead of, the culture's norm of their hostile and fearful attention toward you. Imagine you're in a room of 15 people in a support group, and your hostility's on the surface, and you've got 14 beings there who have been working toward and practicing being the active presence of love. And they each turn their loving attention toward you and offer you the support of breath and the support of being. Think about some of the major turning points in your life that have happened that were based in hostility or fear. How different would they have been if you had been the active presence of love in that situation instead of that raging or fearful person? With these tools, you can create the best year yet of your eternal life. And that's what we're here to support you doing. Bring a stranger to the show tomorrow. We appreciate it. And we hope that your days will be awesome and your nights gentle, restful, deep regenerative times. Thank you for sharing the show with us. Blessings.
Thank you for listening to MindShifters Radio with the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce, and his wife, Jeanie, who present the internal Aramaic process of forgiveness. Michael and Jeanie are here every Monday through Friday from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Earth Angels Radio. For more on Michael and Jeanie, please visit www.whyagain.com. That's www.whyagain.com. AGAIN.com.